hot, episode number 2, off the cuff, from Western North Dakota, Men and Women in Blue coming at you. And so we're progress at full throttle. It seems like we got video episode number 2 already. We go from audio to audio video in one episode. So this should be kind of fun. Hopefully as we look up here and we look around the room, that none of us are looking too silly. So some intros out of the gates for our new listeners and folks that are out there just picking up on the episode itself. My name is Kylan Klauser, and I am I guess now officially a lieutenant for the Dickinson Police Department, and been here for about 16 years. And the man sitting to your left on the screen, my right here, as he's going to be my way I go to him probably when we're doing these, but a man who goes by many different names, but we know him as Chief Dossinger.
Good morning, everyone.
Yeah, it's exciting. We got our first guest here too as we start to spin this thing up and start to head down the road on the mission of it all, and we're going to be turning the mic over to him in just a little bit. But that's our city administrator, Brian Winningham, and so we're really excited about that conversation that he's going to bring to the community and to the guests, and anybody here is trying to listen in, and those that are out there paying attention, I guess, overall. We talked a little bit about the format of this, as it's going to evolve as it goes, and with different guests and stuff, I think. But we're looking at trying to hit up on doing this monthly for you guys out there. And one of the things that we think would be nice for you guys to hear on a monthly basis is kind of what's been happening. Maybe try to expound a little bit on the big things lingering from the month prior in the world of public safety and the police department. And so I think out of the gates, we're going to spend some time talking about that, and we're not going to be short on those. I mean, things are happening here in the community as our people know it, and so maybe that'll be a good segue for me to turn it over to you, Chief, there. I know we went through a list before and stuff, but we've got some big stuff between the crime mapping, the system that just got deployed, and the body cams and escaped inmates, Bakken, trainings, Make-A-Wish stuff. So maybe you want to give some insight from your end.
Certainly, the month of June was very busy for Dickinson Police Department, and we don't have our monthly report completed yet, but I was just kind of looking through some of the initial numbers, and some stuff that kind of jumped out at me yesterday and this morning was the behavioral health calls. Last month that we had in the month of May, we had over 100 behavioral health calls. And I think just kind of looking at that, we'll be slightly over this month. I think we were right around, just in welfare checks alone, we did 78 welfare checks in the month of May, and that's a lot. Yeah, and
you and I both know that many of those are going to be related to the world of mental health, and if not all of them, to some degree. So yeah, crazy.
And the month of June was definitely very busy. As far as for some of the types of calls that we responded to, seems like the urgency, or the seriousness of the calls are increasing in our community. And we had a couple, non-typical calls that we responded to, such as the escaped inmates from the Southwest Multi-County Correctional Center. That was definitely kind of an interesting call for us.
Yeah, we got a lot of feedback on social media with Lieutenant Hanel after he did our public information release on that. I thought it was interesting kind of to read some of the stuff as people were following us, and the big one was how it all occurred. And I think, for those that weren't familiar or had not heard, it was essentially, two of our inmates from the second floor of the facility had forced their way through some of the windows up there, and had a scheme of sorts that obviously they had concocted over the period of time, and were able to get out. And but as that one went along, you were here for most of that, Chief. It was pretty cool to see, the how it evolved quickly from an investigative standpoint and law enforcement standpoint to be able to get them apprehended or located and apprehended. And I don't know, what I think was a pretty good time.
Certainly, I think it was less than 3 hours. I believe was the total apprehension time. But it was a good team effort all the way from our investigative unit to what our criminal analyst was able to do as far as gathering data, and our investigative unit working with our patrol division and also our outside agency and coming up with a really quick resolve to the incidents.
Yeah, I think one highlight for me, for people that are that kind of watch that stuff, and then they read it and they get a lot of chance to analyze it and to come after some things. But, the call in on that thing came, very, very quick, like from the time it occurred. So from the moment that, say, the glass breaks and that they escape, we're a very small margin of time on the report into us, and our officers were fairly close. But when you think of 10, 20, 30 seconds, 60 seconds of a gap, and the difference that can make on the ability for law enforcement to do their job effectively. I think this was kind of, for me anyways, it highlights a little bit of that. And I don't know, do you got any thoughts on that, Chief, from your experience?
Certainly the initial call is so important, the information gathered right away by our dispatch center and how that information is given out to our responding units. It's a vital link in how we solve crimes and respond to calls. I think
one of the other ones I've gotten a bunch of talk on now that they're seeing these on the officers' vests, and there's been a little bit of scuttle as it probably is going to pick up even more as it goes along. But body cams, they're here.
Certainly, this has been something that the PD has researched for several years, and we had came up with a funding mechanism that made this possible. And the City Commission and Brian, who's sitting here with us today, supported moving forward with the purchase of body cameras. And our goal was to have them implemented by August 1st. We were well on our way with that, and I think we're about 95% implemented. I believe the last crew today gets them issued and trained in on them as far as how placement on the body. But it's been a long process through policy writing, through vendor training, coming in and presenting training not only to our staff, but our prosecutors at the district court level and our city prosecute level. But we are almost 100% live with it, and after today, we should be.
I don't like to talk in absolutes, and I'm sure there's some out there that have their own, unique opinions on it. But I think one of the things that was interesting, teaching up on the university on the sites, a lot of the students are asking, like, well, how do the officers feel about this? And I guess there's been some community members that have, like, okay, how do the officers feel about it? But I haven't heard one opinion other than, like, I want this, and this is like the excitement around it and having them right now. What's your take on that from
I haven't heard any negatives from our staff at all regarding them or from the public, and it's really there to protect them. And we're kind of living in the age that if it's not caught on picture or video, it didn't happen. Unfortunately, it's like that. But I think all together, our staff and our community, they're wanted. And I'm looking forward to that. Obviously, nationwide, I think they were, initially instituted because of transparency issues amongst the departments. But, I'm very glad to have them in our department right now.
I think it's going to take it to the next level as an agency, and as far as community service and stuff goes, I think it's phenomenal you're able to get this pulled off for us. And but it's also good to note, in all of our time and experience, they're going to take us to the next level. But we also know, it's not going to be the cure-all end all. It's still, we always say, like, it doesn't register what's going on inside that officer's body, right? What's going on some of those stressful situations, and capturing all of those things that are in the deep peripherals, of the officer's view, and, climate, and maybe wherever they're at, location, time, and stuff. And just because, as it's went, many people think, well, we got the video, so the video must tell the entire story, and it certainly is going to help, I think, our officers tell the story. But I think of some instances, and I'd like to hear if you have any of your own, Chief, that where the video would have helped, but it definitely wouldn't have captured everything that was happening around me in that particular environment I was in.
That's correct. What we see on video, oftentimes in the media, it's just a small smidgen or portion of time. It doesn't show what led up to the incident and the stress and the environment that the officers seen or having to deal with at that point in time. So that's very important. What's played out oftentimes in the courtroom in a sterile environment for hours, an officer has 2 or 3 seconds or less to decide on the appropriate action to take.
Yeah.
And it's easy to play Monday morning quarterback, like
right.
I say at times, but it's important that you understand the total circumstances that these officers are dealing with, and when they have to make these split-second decisions.
Yeah, and we had talked about down the road doing like a use of force episode to highlight some of that. But some of the big case law that we operate off of Grand B. Connor and stuff, where it specifically highlights from the Supreme Court, not judging things hindsight 2020, but trying to take it from the perspective of the officer in said time and place. And that's a lengthy discussion in itself for those that are listening that maybe, don't know what I'm talking about, but, take a look at Graham v. Connor and do a little research on your own. But it's the primary case law that we go off of in our field right now for use of force stuff. And you could pair that with, what Chief has talked about with the body cameras to give you some, I think, better context on that there. So maybe along with the community highlights, Bakken barbecue.
Yes, our team did very well.
Yeah.
Apparently, we know how to smoke meat, apparently.
Yeah, pork on top of it, right?
Exactly. Well, cops do love to eat.
The entity, it was the API that put it on. Who was behind the event itself? You guys helped me out with the Bakken Barbecue, the group. I know the girls that were there with Miss Steiner and such, but I know we had 36 teams or something like that
Yes.
were there, and then the Dickinson PD, Dickinson Police Association took third. Correct me if I was wrong.
Correct,
on that.
yeah.
We had pulled pork, had some smoked corn, had some coleslaw and stuff in there. But I don't, Corporal, Todd Weiler, who was kind of the push behind it for us, who did a really good job, and he was up at like 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning with I think Justin Frederick, one of our sergeants, making that happen on the meat side of it. But the meat was pretty good. But I told him, I said the sleeper might have been those bacon wrapped Oreos.
There you go.
Were the tasty delight there before they left the booth.
I had a chance to judge that event a couple of years ago, and I thought, boy, this is going to be fun.
Yeah.
And about halfway through it, sitting in the sun, nothing like having the meat sweats for just eating too much of that. So,
yeah, I think I heard after the fact, maybe like between 35 and 5,000 or something like that was in attendance, and it was a beautiful night that night for sure. It was packed. And then maybe just kind of a nice way here. I know we're coming up on that 10-minute mark to wrap it up. It was arguably the highlight for the month, national attention, garnered around the event itself. But the Make-A-Wish, and I know you were a big part of that, Chief, making it happen.
that was definitely a highlight for me for a couple of years as far as what the department can do for our community. And it was a very special event for working with the Make-A-Wish Foundation for Cooper Craig. And if you were able to observe it or see it or read about it, it was truly a great event for the Dickinson PD, the community, and for the Cooper Craig family. And we had people respond to us, reach out to us from all over the country. I got emails, letters just saying, boy, this is something great. And they really tied into the patriotism component to this as well. And, I think people are just willing and just can't wait to support and back the police departments and the community. And they really felt patriotic and that this was a great thing to do, that our community took the time and the department took the time out of our schedules to do this for this young man.
Could you, maybe for our viewers here, talk a little, what was, to the degree that we went to make this as real as possible for this little boy, he's just a phenomenal young man, Cooper Craig. Do you maybe tell the viewers and stuff, what were some of the things, how we started or how that day went?
It started as him coming in and basically be issued equipment. He was issued a realistic police uniform with the equipment. That was done all the way down to the boots that we wear, patrol boots, specially ordered. From there, he was later sworn in by the city administrator and the mayor, and that was a nice presentation as well in front of the crowd. And after that, there was cops always have to take a donut break. So after that, there was we received some nice donations from some of the local community members and stuff like that. And we had to have a break. We had to have donut and coffee and milk. And after that, then he hit the road. He came back to utilize. Before you can hit the road, you got to get trained. So he was ran through some short defensive tactics, some handcuffing techniques. Oh. He got to use the virtual training simulator. It was just a number of things. Then he hit the road. He rode with our canine handler, Jaden Peters. So that was an excellent experience for that. And he got the opportunity to make a traffic stop on one of his teachers. And I think that was definitely one of his highlights. But probably the biggest highlight of the event was the ability to apprehend some bank robbers. And that was really a very, very special and cool event. And if you were downtown at that time when it happened, there's still a few people that was wondering what was going on downtown. But it was truly a great event, and there's some videos floating around out there from that'd be worth watching, taking a look at.
Yeah, I was gone on the day, unfortunately, but I know that the texts were flying and things. People were pretty impressed with what the department had pulled off for the young man. So, pretty happy for him on that.
And after the event was wrapped up, any type of major event, you got to do some type of a briefing. And after it was all said and done, he came back and he had a press conference in which he was able to answer some questions on how he apprehended the bank robbers and move forward. And throughout the process, we really had a good crowd of people that took place and observed this. And we had some local media sources that stood up there and asked them some questions, just like they normally would do to a police officer or somebody in administration. So it was a cool event. And after that, there was food provided, a meal provided by Pizza Ranch as well. So it was a good event.
So needless to say, we might have ourselves a future officer in the making there.
I certainly hope so. Hopefully he doesn't go to the dark side and to the fire department side of things. But he liked looking at their big red trucks over there too. So we'll see.
Yeah, he looked good in blue too versus brown. So make sure keep him over here.
Exactly.
Do you have anything else, Chief, you think for the month here on our people?
No, we continue to train well. One fun training event we had EVOC training for our staff, and that's one thing that I always enjoyed is doing EVOC training, and we were able to do that, run everybody in our patrol division through that in the month of June, and there's some cool video out there of our officers experiencing that training on our Facebook page, but that was one of the larger training events we had for the month of June.
Yeah, I got to sit in on that one. I was until that people were, and I had a couple clips from inside, and people were pretty jealous. Like, you're out there on a race car track, essentially, getting to go after it, and I'm going to admit, though, it's like, driving it was pretty good. I did not like sitting in the passenger seat. Like, I got soft guts, and I didn't do well. I got that motion sickness thing from getting thrashed around on that passenger side, messed me up, and had a hard time with the next meal, I guess. But I was much more of a fan of the driving end of it. And maybe I got one more note down for us before we kick it off to our keynote guest here. The crime mapping thing that I know Lieutenant Handel just sent out on Facebook the other day, but I tried to share it with some folks to get it downloaded on their home screen and stuff, but maybe a little background on that or some things we could tell some folks.
Yeah, that's something that's been in the works for quite a while, and we're going to do a report of this at the city commission level. Actually, Lieutenant Handel, who's sitting behind the master controls over there, was kind of the main brainstorm behind this project and working with our vendor, and I'm actually going to ask him to comment a little bit about that.
Yeah, Chief. So going forward here, citizens go to crimemapping.com, enter our zip code in, and they'd be able to get a display of all the NIBRS reportable crimes that have occurred in Dickinson. And looking back to about 9 months is where the data cutoff will be. So it's good for citizens to be able to just be aware of what's in their neighborhood, help us follow trends as well, and we hope it's a good piece of transparency for the public as well.
LT, you had a highlight on that post. I think it's worth bringing up again here. Like the delay on that, so people they might get it and think they're in a real time sort of deal. What was the delay on that?
Sure. Yeah, it's approximately 24 hours for the server to get picked up, and that's after the report has been approved by the supervisor. Some other items that may not display include calls that involve juveniles, so either a victim, suspect, or a witness. Just for privacy concerns, the vendor does not display those, but everything else should plot as long as it's an approved NIBRS report.
Cool. Yeah, when I had shared it with some of the friends the other day, they thought that was a pretty slick deal. So hopefully that gets some nice traction, get some good feedback. And I think throughout all of this, that's one of the big things, Chief, like you encourage when we've been off camera and off recording, just in fostering some feedback through these conversations to us and different ways to improve on whatever we're doing for the citizens that we're serving.
Certainly, we're always looking at ways that we can improve our service to the community, and one of it is getting accurate information out to the public. They can log on to this crime mapping system. They can see what's going on, and they're part of the community, and just another way for us to get information pushed out to the public.
Great. I like it. Well, I'm excited. I think we're going to take a short little break here before we kick it over to our city administrator, the man at the helm for the city of Dickinson, Mr. Brian Winningham, who has a pretty great story, I think, that our viewers are going to enjoy listening to, and some perspective, a lot of experience and good things coming up here. So stay tuned. Morning, Brian.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
Everyone. I'm doing very well. Thank
Welcome to the Off the Cuff studio here at the Dickinson PD. What do you think?
It's off the cuff. It's definitely it's a multi-use area. People probably don't realize that, although this is a really nice building, space is limited for any time you're trying to do extra training. This is part of the training. We've got some screens behind us, but this will all go away real quick, and then you'll have an officer in here doing training right away. So thanks for having me. Thanks for putting this all together.
Yeah, for sure. First guess, so it's kind of a number one out of the gates for us, and so hopefully we do well for you as much as you for us on that end. So
I'll do my best.
Yeah.
I'll do my best.
We're trying to find our way through this, and but we're excited, and I think it's just shows the right direction that the administration has us in here with new ideas and trying new things and stuff like that up here for the community that's watching, and for those that we're serving. But maybe I want to kick it over to you, Brian. Like maybe tell the viewers and stuff what they need to know about you, a little bit about yourself.
I think that's a good question. To know about me, really, how did I get here? I think that's what I get asked that question.
Like that.
How did you get here? And so, the short version is, I'd served in the U.S. Army for right at 29 and a half years, and the half years did matter because it seemed like it went by fast. And so I found myself really out of a job. So what am I going to do next with my life? And so I wound up retiring, moving back to where I grew up in Central Valley of California. Really, I'd been back there a few times because there's friends and family. But the landscape had really changed, and so found ourselves working a small ranch, running some cows, trying to live that life kind of away from everybody. And I was working on a Native American reservation close to where I'm at in an after-school program, which led to multiple people in the tribe and even the tribal chairman asked me to apply for the tribal administration job. So I didn't really want to do that because I know once you're in that mantle of responsibility, it's pretty heavy. It's not an easy thing to be in charge of anything because of the responsibility. So I took that on. I went through the application process. They actually hired me, and I spent a couple years essentially running a tribal government of one of the second, third largest tribal governments in the state of California. It's a casino tribe in the foothills of the Central Valley of California. And that, gave me a really good appetite into what one person really can do to shape and study and try to form recommendations for policy, even in what's called Indian country throughout the U.S. And found myself enjoying it. The same tension of, it's enjoying the job every day, but also it's really frustrating. That tension, I think, exists anywhere where you find yourself in a job you really hope you can use all your talents and all the experience that somebody else has poured into me, and now I can give that back. And so after multiple years of service, I think that was a good place to land.
How big was the tribe? I might get this wrong, butchered. The tribal council or those there that when you were hired and had to go to we got the city commission here with 5. Like what did that look like for the tribe?
Yeah, so it's about a 6,000 member tribe. About 54,000 acres worth of land mass. It goes from 1,000 feet of elevation to about 6,000. We take care of part of the national forest, or what's really one of the treasures, the giant sequoia forest. And the tribal council itself is an elected body of tribal members that live on the reservation of 9 individuals. Those 9 individuals, make up the core of the tribal council, and they have, of course, other tribal members that are in the committees, just like a normal city would be. But, it's a dual role. It's a domestically sovereign nation, as with all Indian country in the U.S. It's a federally recognized tribe. And the same challenges you'd have within a city government, except for things that are unique to reservations, not just public law and living in the state of California and being on a federal reservation. The same challenges exist. You're just trying to, at the core of it, take care of people. And you're trying to do that in a rural, in a very, kind of austere environment in some respect, but all the things that you see in a normal city, public works, our Bureau of Indian Affairs, Tribal Police Department, our fire department, rural fire department, wildland fire department, all that stuff, tribal courts, all part of the tribal government. So really unique, great experience and challenges there, and that put me on a path to continue to go after something that I think is appropriate, which is going into city administration or city management. And that led me to look for my family. We wanted to move and go somewhere else. And really, I tell this story to people that ask, and it's, I wanted to go to Idaho, or I wanted to go to Montana or Wyoming. And I've lived in Colorado, and my thinking was, I kind of want to go to a free country, where there's a little more individual freedoms, where there's also a way to shape and maintain that individual freedom. And it's appropriate now because we're ready to go into 4th of July weekend, and I feel that here within this area in the city of Dickinson. So that led me to apply. I really liked the emblem of the city of Dickinson. It's got
the bronc on there.
It was like, hey, if that's even close, to the landscape, I'm all about it. And so that's what led me to apply, and it was very deliberate, and I made no bones about it, talking to the interviewee panels and the city commission that, don't hire me here if I'm not the right fit, and I'm not going to be any different than what you're seeing during this interview process. So here I am.
What about so the military? Why the military? As a young man, why did the judge make you do it, or did?
It's a great question, because I'd like to think that every kid wants to be a cop, right? I do like to think that, because I did. I wanted to be a police officer. And then of course, if that didn't work out, I wanted to go in the Army. So I played war as a kid. Around the neighborhood, I was always one wanting to, be the sergeant, and follow the old movies. And then if that didn't work out, I'd go into firefighting. That's kind of what I thought I would do. And so I did a little bit of all of those, in my mind for so many years. I thought, okay, here I am. And so, I was a sheriff's explorer with the Tulare County Sheriff's Department, and they had a pretty big program, and it's a very large county. They had their department's 200 plus deputy sheriffs, and they have run the jail system. And so in California, some of those departments are larger. And so they had a pretty good program. And so when I was 14, I started out, and hey, I got to wear a uniform, got to pretend to be a mini cop for a while, go through all these little academies. And so I thought, okay, I'm on the path for that. But it turns out, I didn't have enough money for college. So I thought, what can I do? So at 17 years old, kind of waited to the day I turned 17 and a half, you can enlist in the Army. No surprise. And so anybody of these listeners, you can do that, right, if you have parental consent. Well, at the time I didn't really have any, didn't have any parents at the time. It's a longer story. Basically, I got my aunt, who wasn't really the legal guardian, but I think all that's over now because I've retired. So she signed the documents for me to enlist in the United States Army. And so that was part of the California National Guard. But, you go to the same Army training, because they offered a $2,000 signing bonus to be a truck driver. I thought, I'm in. Hey, I'm going to take that $2,000, and I'll do a lot with that. This is 1989. And so, that's how it started. And it was really, the intent was, I can do this, come back and find a college to go to, even though at the time, my GPA was pretty low. But that was the hope.
You talked about every kid wanting to be a police officer and law enforcement, and many anyways. And you yourself, you have some family in law enforcement, is that right?
I do. I tried to do my best in my life to demonstrate, how to be a good adult, how to be a good human. And so my oldest son, in spite of my trying, he also joined the Army, also went on to, do great things as a non-commissioned officer and Ranger School and all the things that, that young soldiers want to do. Well, my son did all that, even though he saw some of the great things and miserable things that I had to endure as he grew up as an Army brat. But now he left that role in the Army after 5 years, and basically said, "Hey, Dad, I'm gonna go into law enforcement." I'm like, "Oh, good. What do you want to do?" "I don't know. I'm thinking about Border Patrol." I was like, oh, good, great. They said, start speaking Spanish, get your skills up, But I didn't want to just discourage him for anything. That's the start, because I think he wanted to eventually go in the FBI and all those things. Well, it turns out they had a great veterans, program within the city of Houston, down in Texas. So he went through the academy, and now he's a Texas peace officer. So he serves as a police officer for the city of Houston, and I get some good reports from him, and they have all the same, issues that are faced with our current state of law enforcement in the country, body cameras included, and in their role they have a lot of challenges, and so I get some good reports from him, and I pray for him every day.
Yeah, I think an interesting question that just came to mind here. So you think about, you got your history with in the military for a long time, a good portion of your life, 29 and a half years. Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you got a son now who served a little bit of time, and he's in law enforcement. And now you're at the city of Dickinson, and of course now you to a capacity over. You think of law enforcement, public safety, and the responsibilities of the city administrator. And I know everybody. It's easy for all of us to sit in a room and to say, like, well, all the similarities, all the crossover from the military to the law enforcement and the public safety. And we're blessed to be in a community that highlights that. Quite a bit. What do you think some of the differences are, like, when you think of military serving and then versus, law enforcement here in the country, things that you've seen, relationship wise, and maybe to part that a little bit. You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's always, and I use the word tension because there's always this tension, because there's the current state of affairs. There's things that we are faced with every day, and then there's this tension of what I wish it was, what I want the future to be. And a lot of that time is you look back, try to figure out what went wrong or what went right, and sometimes we want to go back to a place that actually didn't exist. So, all the good times you may have had in your life, that may not have been so good. And so that's the framework that I see happening in law enforcement, where it's a dominant narrative that somehow things have gone wrong. What I really see is this whole idea of transparency that Chief mentioned about body cameras, and it's not really a buzzword, but it has become a word that we hear about as if that is something that needs to change. I believe at the core of those that serve the public, and that's primary law enforcement up front, because you're in uniform, you're wearing the flag, you're out in front of danger at all times. I think people don't realize that at the core of that spirit, like law enforcement in particular, there's an oath. It's an essential oath. It's not cheap. And so if you're the average American and you're out there seeing law enforcement, they may not realize what it means to swear an oath, to say, hey, I'm doing this to defend something greater than myself. I'm defending the Constitution. And that's no different in the military. The military, the officers and the enlisted take the same essential oath. There's a couple different words in there about authorities for the president and the Uniform Code of Military Justice, but it's essentially the same oath. And so when law enforcement officers and those that serve the public, raise their right hand, they're swearing an oath. And they're basically saying, I'm going to do this wherever I'm at when no one's watching. So that's what I've seen is something that's really difficult for a person to understand who's never had to do that, who's never had to raise their right hand and say, I'm willing to commit my life all the time, because this oath is not just a piece of paper, but it's something I'm living out. And that's the common theme I see with all of our heroes. That's, firefighters, those that are in public service, and particularly those that are out front in law enforcement.
I think to follow up, without come back to Chief over here, like you think about, the big one that they hammer on us on a lot right now is about this change and progress, right? And doing things better. And I'm like, I'm the youngest in the room, career-wise and age-wise here, and I just think, I highlight out in the short time I've been in here, I think about all the changes and all the good things that we've done, in the Dickinson Police Department. And maybe Chief, could you, like, on your end of it, from the time your law enforcement career started, and you had a short stint, I know, in another agency, the involvement of things from where it began to where we are now, and as a chief executive for a department.
Well, there's all kinds of buzzwords out there. as far as moving forward with law enforcement. Right now, it used to be years ago that you hired officers that were strong, somewhat intimidating looking, were kind of a force to deal with. Now you want the method you go down, that you hire individuals that are good communicators, can de-escalate situations, and really have a very strong education. So over the last 30, 40 years, the image of a police officer has really changed, and the expectations of a police officer has really changed. 30, 40 years ago, you wanted a police officer that could walk into a bar fight and deal with the situation almost single-handedly. Now you're really looking for that officer that can walk into those situations and talk those situations down, so you don't have to go hands-on. The mythology of law enforcement has really changed over the last 30, 40 years. Just even within the last 5 years, or even within the last 2 years, the message that's out there in our country has changed drastically.
I look at little things like when you first started, were you guys doing handwritten reports?
When I worked, yes. When I worked up in the city of Williston, basically everything was, for the most part, handwritten.
Yeah. And can I date you a little bit? What year was that?
I started up there right around 97.
Like almost 2000.
Almost 1997. At that point in time, if you didn't actually physically make an arrest, you basically called into the dispatch center, and I dealt with John Doe. This is what happened, and then do a police report. Obviously, now we do police reports for everything. We do police reports for responding to an animal call. That's just how our time, the expectations of law enforcement has changed. And, individuals that want to get into law enforcement because of the action, we tell them, you know what, you're going to spend a lot of your time just documenting what you're doing. If you don't like writing police reports, if you don't like to write, law enforcement is not the right career for you.
Yeah, from something that, the archaic nature of, handwriting, a report or whatever. And now some of the stuff we talked about at the beginning of the episode here, now we have a technology where when our officers ever draw their firearm from a holster, it'll kick on cameras within 30 feet.
Correct. There's a lot more to just the body camera project, but if they draw their firearm, their duty weapon, or their taser right now, it automatically not only makes sure that their camera is on, but if there's another responding officer within 30 to 40 feet, it makes sure that their camera is on as well. So the technology that's in law enforcement that we have right now in our community, it's amazing. It really is. When I first started for the city of Dickinson, I was issued a set of handcuffs, a duty weapon, and if you wanted to carry OC spray, you could. That was kind of before you had the PR-24, the Mondac PR-24. Yep. That was phased out before I came. And then, a couple years later, we got the expandable baton. But that's what you had. You had handcuffs, your duty firearm, and some people carried OC spray. That was it. Now look at everything that you carry on your duty belt. Obviously we had portables, but now look what everybody carries on their duty belts. It's the technology and the expense and the equipment and the training necessary for these officers to utilize this equipment. It has drastically evolved. And you look at the squad cars, MDTs, mobile video cameras, the way that the radar units work, and the amount of technology and the money just in those squad cars, it's amazing. It really is.
Yeah, that might be a nice segue back for you, Brian, on, when you think about the role of a city administrator, as you come into the field and you bring your experience and stuff from the military law enforcement end of it, kind of favors the guys up here in the room just a little bit, from that end. And I guess I'd like to kind of know, what is for the viewers, your belief or position, view on the city role, like your city administrator role as it relates to, public safety for the community. We got Chief Dossinger here who's running our ship and doing obviously an awesome job. So how does the role of the city administrator play into all of this, with the community, and as you kind of come familiar and stuff, can you elaborate on any of that?
Yeah, I think what Chief Dossinger is talking about when he talks about how technologically things have changed. What I have found for the role of city administrator, I immediately think back why I started doing what I was doing. And so I started out as an infantry officer, and that's a really unique, once I went to college and got commissioned, that is the same essential work. It's about taking care of people. And so I had, 35, at the time, young men in the infantry, and you're trying to get them to do the right thing at all times. And and it's really challenging. I can see the translation between what we faced with, same type of kit and equipment, that eventually, get all this technology involved. And it's really interesting because there's a connection here with Mayor Scott Decker. So at the time, he was NCO, non-commissioned officer, at the infantry school at Fort Benning, Georgia, when I went through as a lieutenant, and this would have been 94 time frame. And so we have this commonality where we can talk about, you were part of the, Land Warrior, which they were making us all strap all this gear on.
And you didn't cross paths?
No, we did not cross paths
Okay.
that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
He might have some stories. Back then, you didn't have social media, so we probably would. There's no, and I can tell a lot of war stories because there's not a lot of witnesses. So, so it's good. And so I didn't see him, but we know some of the same people as as I've been working here now 6 months. We've talked a few times. I'm like, wow, didn't realize there was a lot of commonality, and I suffered through a lot of the things that he helped create. So I wound up taking my platoon eventually to the National Training Center at Fort Irwin, California, and having to wear all this gear. Every pound matters when you're walking 12, 15 miles in the middle of the night. And so, Land Warrior, think about body cameras. And so there was this sense that, man, if we could just hear and see everything you're doing, we'll make you better. Like, no, you're making me really worse now because I have to make the decision. You can't do it fast enough. And it's one of the fears with body cameras, that no, it's not somebody commanding you way back in the nowhere. It's always about the person on the ground. And so I take that same essential thought as a city administrator, that really I'll always know less than the person doing the job. I always will. And I hope I can make, good decisions and recommendations for the commission that supports, and you said favors, law enforcement. I believe it favors everybody, that it favors all those that are actually doing the essential job.
I have to say that up here, right, Nate?
You do, and it's good. I appreciate it. It's worthy, of your position. But for those that are out there that, I call them knuckle draggers or wrench turners or all those jobs that I actually want to do. I'd rather be out there doing that. Sometimes it's not as complex. Sometimes it's more complex, but it's where the rubber meets the road. It's where, people have to make decisions and they affect the life of somebody, every day instantly, so I'm separated, by minutes, hours, days, and at this point now years when you're talking about budget cycles. I'm separated by years of decision making. So I have to get it right strategically. You have officers and those that are on the front line that make strategic decisions in seconds.
Right.
And that's something that when I see as a city administrator, the role is to try to always support that. It's very difficult because I'm not doing it. So I have to go down and I have to talk a lot to people. I have to get feedback from others. This venue here as a podcast is something where I can get feedback later when someone says, oh, I like what you said, or I didn't like what you said. It's all still feedback. And so for me, the role would be that I've got so much to learn. I've got so much that I have to study and learn about every job here. Right now we have 201 full-time employees for the city of Dickinson. And I want to know every person, and I want to know what their challenges are. And I want to translate that to the commission and say, this is what our challenges are for the city, based on the 201 sensors that are on the ground that are faced with the job every day. It's a difficult task, but I think it's worthy.
How many, we get asked this quite a bit, and what's the mileage of streets in the city of Dickinson offhand? Do you know?
I think we're at 458 miles. I'm actually not guessing. I think in my brain I've seen this number. I think it's 458 miles of city streets, and we have a really good public works director, and he'll text me right away and say, no, boss, that's not right. And that's what I want.
Yeah.
For me to say something and go like, that's not right. And I'll say, well, good. Then now I know. But I think I'm close.
Yeah, I think that's a good number to highlight for the perspective of our community. Sometimes, when it comes to the patrol officers and how many we have on the streets and how many miles of street they're actually, out there rolling on from that standpoint. So, yeah, you talk about quick decisions, and as long as we're talking about serious things here, Chief Dossinger's had the unfortunate. We talked last episode, Chief, on how many officer-involved shootings at this stage for your career.
I believe it was number 5.
Yeah,
we just went through.
Number 5, and very lucky. And so you come into a situation, you're just coming on like 8 months, 9 months with the city here-ish?
6 months.
6 months. And so, we have our incident here about a month ago, and our guys, they seem to be doing really good. They're back to work and all good things on that end. From your, how does a situation like that for a city administrator play out? Like, do you have anything you could add to that for the Dickinson Police Department, and maybe what you kind of heard from the community? And
yeah, I think so. I think, first blush, off the cuff here, I immediately, think back to experiences I've had. And so when you talk about shots fired, or you talk about things that are happening on the ground, first report typically is wrong. So what I've learned, I've had 8 combat tours. I've been, around the world, seen, really complex environments. And so, typically the first shots in the first report are wrong. People need to know that. And so we live in an instant gratification day. People can video things, and it's still not the truth. The truth is that instantaneous heartbeat moment that an officer has to be there to make this decision. You talked a little bit about Monday morning quarterbacking. For me, my first blush on that was, okay, where are we at? Is everybody safe? And Chief and I were going back and forth early in the morning, and my first sense was, we have a great department. And that is my initial thought, was I know whatever's happening, that I know it's going to be the right things that were being done, and that's what I've developed in the last, just short 4 months of understanding what the department's, how it's structured, how the leadership is. And so I had a lot of confidence that no matter what occurred on the ground, the officers were doing the right thing. And if somehow we figured out later, going back, that wasn't the case, I still knew that we had the leadership that would be able to correct if there was any inconsistencies with the decision-making on the ground. It turns out there's very little things that we would change, because the environment was so fast, and we come out with a situation that, although tragic in some aspects, with the loss of life, was the best outcome possible for the moment, and really seconds matter. And so how I view that is that in the future, what I have to do is now hours, weeks, months, years, that I have to help make decisions to create that environment on the ground that always makes that decision easier. That's equipment, training, budget, all those things that I have to take recommendations to the commission. And that's how I view that. I view that role is I get to be that person that hopefully can articulate all that to the commission, so that the next time this occurs, we're just better. And there's always, some people don't like to hear this, but every decision we make, it can be better.
Early on in my career, and we say, Mike, Lieutenant Hanel, Mad Mixer, he's a lifelong guy here, and Chief Dossinger, and I remember when Chief was my sergeant, and talking about how good of a community, Dickinson is to serve, and reminded of that early on. And then, as I've got older, and now I'm going on 21 years here, I'm trying to be way more outspoken about that, about how great of a place, this is, and reason to raise a family and stuff like that. But all being here, we've all been here quite a while now, and you kind of become immersed in it and stuff. So, like, you think of some of these things, and for you, still being fresh in that sense, fresh to us here, like, what do you see as like the things that make it unique here, for this community and our people?
Yeah, this is, primarily the reason, I want to find, a good place in the cemetery, right? City's going on some projects to build a mausoleum. Like, I got to get one of those places early. That way I know where I'm going to end up. And so I say that because I think I've found the place where we're going to continue to raise the rest of my family. I have a 9-year-old, and it's just me and my wife here. My other kids, are good adults out there. Maybe they'll return or come back to where our home will be, which is going to be here. And so what I found was I didn't know what to expect. I expected all those things that you hear about that are glossy pictures and videos. I wanted to figure out what legendary looked like, and some of that legendary is like, oh, it's 40 below.
Yeah.
Like, okay. You cannot escape that. That's got to be there's a legend somewhere developing there.
40 below for 3 weeks.
And so I was like, okay, this is game on. This is going to be great. coming from different environments. I've lived in some cold climates, and then of course I hear the story that, well, we're in the banana belt of North Dakota. I'm like, oh, that's good. So we're like, it's only gonna be 30 below here instead of 40. So I was like, yeah, that's great. But I think what I found was, people always matter most. And so going around, I get to see people, with, it goes back to transparency. So how do you know a person's character? Well, it's how they act. You don't really know their character. And so for over a long period of time, you'll see actually who they are because of what their actions are and what they demonstrate, what their real life's beliefs are. They can believe all they want, but you'll see it if they actually believe it, because they'll take action. And for the most part, we've seen some just great families, welcoming us. You look around the city, and it does feel like everybody that's here, and this is super naive of me, but it does feel like everybody's here is just wanting to have a good life. That they want their family to be raised well. They want to have good infrastructure in their city. They want the city to support their freedom. They want to be, people want to be free here. It's a very interesting bubble we live in, and that's what I call it. It's a bubble, and I want to keep it that way.
Yeah, right.
Where we have a core mission in the city, and it's really part of that, enhancing quality of place. That's part of our core mission, and so we need to sustain the quality of place. So you talked a little bit about, always rapidly evolving or changing. Sometimes it shouldn't be a never-ending goalpost. You cross the, it's not a finish line, but maybe it's a score. Maybe it's an end zone, if you want to use football. But basically, celebrate the score. Celebrate the score. Game's not over. We've got to enjoy that. And some of that is sustaining what our city needs. And so that's what I've tried to bring to a little bit of the thought process in city staff. I hope I can do this, but it's a bit of a daily grind, where you basically say, hey, it's finish line is way down the road. It's not always a sprint, but there is times where we have to speed up. There are occasions where we're going to sprint. And so if we can sustain a lot of the good quality, I get some feedback from people. I hear the things that we need the most. And it's always that person's perspective. So if it's two people, and I say this to others, you can call me on my cell phone. You can have my number. And if it's one person out of 1,000 that's the biggest complainer, that'll be 25 people a year. I can handle it. I've got pretty thick skin. Complain away, and the best part would be complain with some answers in mind. Tell me, because I'm always working under authority. I want to know what I can do, and I can't change everything because I work under a very defined authority under the city commission. Just like a police officer on the ground, I want to know where the authority's at. And I will race to the ragged edge of failure if I know I'm helping somebody of that authority. And I will stand on that.
Yeah. I like it. We're coming up on a near end here, but before we do that, I want to give Chief a chance. He's going to do a speed cuffing round with you in the end. So that way I get to ask these questions here so he gets to stay in safe territory, manage that whole business. But he's going to get a chance at you here with some speed cuffing at the very end. And I know you're familiar with the term probably a little bit there. But before we get into that official round of it and turn it over there, what any last things? You had some nice conversations before we got on camera and recording. Things that for the listeners or viewers that are tuning in here moving forward for the city of Dickinson and or city administrator, public safety, criminal justice, anything there you could add at the end?
Yeah, so we're going through the 2022 budget. For governments, you got to look out years out. We got a 1-year budget, but really we have to consider what do we want the city environment to look like, and that's every employee that supports the citizen. What do we want that to look like in 10 years? What do we want it to look like that in 2035, which really isn't that far away. It's our city's comprehensive plan, and so we're reviewing that. We are trying to shape the environment to be the best for the citizen, and then steward taxpayer dollars wisely. So there's some projects. The town square is one of the projects that we're racing to get started. There's a few things that we're already going to move our city hall, and there's many reasons for that. Going into a historic building, I think it'll be more vibrant to downtown. I think we'll have more space to open up for citizens to come in and meet with our staff. And then there's just a few things that we want to make sure that we right size. And we've talked about it with reorganization of some of our city police leadership, with some of our bringing more recruits, more department recruits on the ground, trying to get more officers here, and then presenting that message to the rest of the country that we're open for business, that we want people to come develop, because this is a great place to live. I mean, should be our core mantra, which is just a very simple, we are the first choice for families, a great choice for opportunity. I believe it because I'm taking action on that. And so that's what I'd say. And I know that, Chief's got an evaluation coming up, so this speed round shouldn't be too tough.
Yeah, all right. That's awesome. That's really good stuff here. And so I'll just give a quick intro for you, Chief, where you get a take off firing away there. So this last round is this is Lieutenant Handel's idea of speed cuffing. It's you get through these stressful situations. They're a little bit dynamic. That noise you hear in the background, that's the sound of those cuffs going on. So we're nearing it. But once we reach that point in these encounters that we have that are under control, and we know that we can get these handcuffs on, we want to speed cuff these things, get them on as safely as possible, get the situation wrapped up. So 30 seconds is approximately what we got here. This is going to be kind of a snap of the fingers, fast as you can go. He's going to give them to you, not much time to think about it. And I think that's maybe a good segue to Chief Dossinger. Have at him.
Are you ready to rock?
Let's go.
Well, before we start this, I want to thank you and your family for your service to this country, especially moving forward here with the 4th of July weekend, and just want to thank you for your service.
Thank you.
But are you ready? Okay, here we go. Speed cuff. Favorite armed forces branch?
Oh, the U.S. Army.
Our Army is older than the country. True or false?
Oh, it's false.
Big Mac or Whopper?
Oh, I think Big Mac.
Favorite part of North Dakota?
Dickinson.
Least favorite?
Also Dickinson.
C4 or dynamite?
I think C4 for sure.
Favorite martial arts move or tactic?
Oh, it's got to be the ultimate punch.
Number of continents in the world you've been on?
42.
Number of countries in the world you've been to?
Okay, the other one was 7. Now this one's 42.
Patton or MacArthur?
Definitely Patton.
Saving Private Ryan or Zero Dark 30?
Private Ryan.
There you go.
That's good. That's
very good.
Just piggyback off of a Chief's gesture there. And Brian, thank you for being here with us. Get into the outro here, Mike. I think for our listeners, our viewers, please subscribe to Off the Cuff, Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon Music. Like the YouTube channel. Facebook. We're going to have some stuff out on it. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow the Facebook page. Lieutenant Handel, he is a alter ego on the social media sources and a genius at that. So thanks for being here, Brian. We look forward to discussions down the road.
Good. Well done. Thank you.